This is going to be, Philip, I asked you here because storm special, and it's news, everybody, for our storm special. Are you reading me loud and clear there, Philip?
I'm certainly getting you. You're getting very much into the vibe of the storm there. You look like you're kind of stuck in a cabin up in the hills of Cavan somewhere on the Monaghan border there. You have your checked shirt on. You're looking like a bit of a prepper there today. And you're just a little bit pixelated as well, which leads us to believe that maybe the broadband coverage in Ireland isn't all it should be at this point on a Friday after one of the strongest storms in the history of the country, Keith. How are you keeping?
I'm doing okay. I'm in Mullingar. I've been tree from a road. In Mullingar, they're saying it's because of the storm, but that tree has been there for about 20 years. I think they're just making the most of the storm to get people down to clear it and to tidy the place up.
Well, they never specified which actual storm it was now, in fairness. So, I mean, you went down there, the goodness of your heart, and I applaud you for that, but if they get the day's work out of you, the best of luck to them.
How has the storm been for you? I have to say it's not been great for a certain sports organisation in the capital of Ireland. In the capital of Ireland, over in Connacht. As you can see, what was a beautiful dome, training pitch, practice game area, absolutely torn asunder.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad to see something like that, which one of the sort of most modern GAA venues that was available to people, especially this time of the year when the National League is starting in Gaelic football and hurling in Ireland this weekend. So it's it's a very, very bad time for this to happen. That building, I believe, cost 3.1 million euros to build. Now, we're looking at it there. Obviously, the top picture is it in all its splendor. The bottom picture is it this morning after the hurricane had a right go at it. Hopefully, it won't cost the 3.1 million to get it back up again. Hopefully it'll only be $1 million or $1.5 million, but it's a huge blow to the community or the GAA community in the West, because that kind of facility, because they're indoor and because it's sort of artificial turf and everything, I'm assuming that would be used by schools and by clubs and by inter-county teams and everything. So it's going to be a huge blow to the local community over the next year or so until they get back up and running again. But one of the things that struck me about it, Keith, was surely engineers, when they're putting these things together, I mean, I usually blame architects, and people always go, well, it's actually the engineers to make sure. Shouldn't they be sort of, making the odd calculation and saying, this is the west of Ireland, lads. On occasion, you're going to get a little bit of a storm. So you would have thought that maybe it might have been a little bit more robust than what they managed to put up there.
You'd think so. I can remember camping in Connemara years ago, and myself and a friend, and we bought this beautiful silver dome tent. It was quite new at the time, quite fashionable, just a silver dome tent. It looked like sort of a spaceship with pegs in it, with two smelly young lads in it. But the wind was so strong where we were near Carrow Row that we had to tried to sleep, full of buckfast, thank God, with our backs to each other and our feet up in the air holding the tent up, because with the wind the way it was, and this was the summertime, but the way the wind was, when we got out of the tent or we stopped holding it up with our feet, it was just completely flat to the ground, and we were behind a wall.
I'll tell you something, next time you'll bring the poles, won't you?
But it's the design of the dome. It's supposed to hold itself up. Aldi seems to get a bit of a doing over, or there's always one Aldi that gets a bit of a doing over from a storm, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if there's a storm or if there's a riot, I don't know what it is. Storms and rioters in Ireland just seem to have a taste for Aldi, and they just go off as soon as they have a chance. And again, this is in Clifton, County Galway, in the West Coast. We should obviously say to viewers and listeners that it was the West Coast that was hit hardest. Ireland witnessed record winds overnight. I think it was Mace Head was where the record was set. 183 kilometers an hour the wind was measured at there. And when you look at these pictures from Clifton and the devastation of that storm, because mean, we can joke about it and all that kind of thing, Keith, but that's somebody's business, and there's people working there, and there's a community that depends on this particular Aldi for the bread that they no doubt bought up all the stocks of and that kind of thing. So it's a hard blow. And we said the same thing about the GEA centre there in Connacht as well, though. These are things that people have to recover from. And again, you'd have to ask, there's really sort of two questions I have. A is about the engineering, and the other is to do with the insurance for these things, because we discussed it on the show last week about the wildfires in California and in Los Angeles in particular, because it's going to get more and more difficult as climate change starts to have an effect. And we have these extreme weather events happening in Ireland and around the globe. Sooner or later, and especially if you're an Aldi, you're not going to be able to get insurance for these kinds of things. And if you remember back, I think was it Hurricane Charlie or something in 1987, 88, my dad had a little building company on the north side of Dublin. And on a day like today, you'd just be waiting for the wind to go down, and then you'd be off out and you'd be up on roofs, putting tiles back that had slid out of place, and slates and that, corrugated iron roofs that might have been in a shed in somebody's garden might have wound up 6 doors down. So they do an awful lot of damage, and an awful lot of that work would have been paid for by insurance companies. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to premiums and what happens to the policies themselves, because, are these acts of God now at this stage? Because it's getting to the stage where if you have a wind of 183 kilometers an hour, what insurance company is going to want to be involved in that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've seen it over in the States, and we spoke about it as well. Insurance companies are getting, they want to pay out less and less, and they're finding more and more reasons to not pay out. Is this an act of God? Is nobody going to get money out? The government are going will pony up a few quid after a disastrous week. Surely they'll want to ingratiate themselves with the people of Ireland, the South and the West, especially because they seem to have neglected them when it comes to picking ministers.
Yeah, I think was it Mary Lou MacDonald was saying at some stage a little bit earlier on today there, we were on WhatsApp about it. She was saying that there was only one minister from all of Connacht, and yet Connacht is the place that has now, I mean, obviously we'll have to tally it all up in that, but an awful lot of damage has been done in that particular province, so it is interesting to see that. But I think the insurance industry as a whole is all about sort of taking in as much money as possible, and okay, we may say paying out as little of it as possible, but it's how those premiums are then calculated. Because if you're going to have a concert, for example, like, the Failas back in the day, you might have had your lovely silver domed tent down there, those things would all have a premium calculated on yeah, exactly. You did have a premium calculated on how many people are going to go and the time of the year and all that kind of thing, and the sort of losses that could be made, because there are losses to that Aldi. That Aldi is going to be shut now for several weeks until they get a roof back or get some sort of covering on it again, until they get it stocked up again. And again, we're talking about people's livelihoods, not just the owner of that particular supermarket, be it a local trader who has a franchise from Aldi or the company itself, but also the local people, the men and women who work there and who depend on that place for their 8-hour shifts every day, and indeed for people to go shopping there. Because the other side of that is, you know how people's habits change. I'm not sure now. I know that you're in the business of moving where you live at the moment, but I go to the same sort of shop every day for the bits and pieces kind of thing that I need. And if something was to happen to that and I was to get into the habit of going somewhere else, maybe I'm not going to instantaneously just go back there when the old Aldi, the old Lidl or the old Super Value reopens again. So this is one of those things that it's going to be very, very hard in the future to calculate what the risk is and how much a business is going to have to pay to try to mitigate that risk of these extreme weather events.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think you're right. It's a good point, because you get used to a new place then, and you're like, oh, I've just found this new place. I got used to it. So it's very hard then to, when you reopen, to build the business back up. So I suppose we do want to say from everybody here at MOTH News that, we hope you're okay. It seems to be the West and the South that got the worst of it. But there has been, I mean, I don't know what your feelings are, but I noticed even a TD kind of having a go at Met Éireann for these orange and red and yellow weather warnings, and sort of saying, Jesus, in our day we just said it was windy. But now I think it served a purpose. It did the job. I think people don't understand, when you tell people to stay at home, you've got less accidents, you've got less people turning up in A&E, and that in turn means that less emergency service people have to be out on the road. So it does work, and I really wish people would stop. Look, what is the problem with just staying at home, even if it turns out to be okay? And I think this time it served a purpose and proved itself worthwhile. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Philip.
Yeah, I think what we're suffering in terms of sort of public service announcements like that, Keith, is a little bit of a post-COVID hangover, because we all got a pain in our backside being told what to do. Even those of us who thought that lockdown was a good idea and that kind of thing, we all sort of got sick of it in the end, going, okay, 2 meters and doing this at a bus stop and that kind of thing. People got tired of it. And then they see this sort of big brother thing when the state comes out and says, no, you need to be very careful. But look at the figures don't lie and the pictures don't lie. 183 kilometers an hour for Ireland is a hell of a wind. That's a hurricane, boys and girls, right? And we have seen instances in the past where people were down at the famous tower in Salt Hill. Indeed, a friend of mine, his wife swims there pretty much every day. And we've seen people go down there because it's a cool thing and, the waves are crashing around and that kind of thing, and you take a risk. But when you take that risk, and if something goes wrong, somebody else has to go out and save you, or somebody else has to go out and try and save you, and that puts them at risk. So when you think of the Gardaí who were on duty last night, the fire service personnel who were on duty last night, the Coast Guard personnel, the people in defence forces and civil defence who would have been called out last night, we have a responsibility to them not to behave like dickheads in these kinds of situations. I know you might want to go and do these things. I know you might want to go, you had a flight at 12 o'clock lunchtime today in Dublin. You thought, I should look at, I'll just drive up from Cork. How bad can it be, But sometimes we need that little bit of assistance to be responsible. And I actually think that the communication this time was really good. The idea of having a code red warning, as I say, there is actually, you have sort of green and then you have yellow and you have code red. There's actually one level above that in Ireland, and that is code sourdough starter kit. That knows when that's what only comes in when you're going to be stuck at home for several months at a time, But I do think the people were very good. And the absence of those photographs, I mean, again, it's very sad to see pictures of the Aldi and very sad to see pictures of the GAA venue that's collapsed there. But what we haven't seen is that, the clown who was out caught up the mountain or who was caught, diving into the bay in Salt Hill and that kind of thing and had to be rescued. And that's a good thing because, again, if you're relying on the good nature of other people to come and rescue you when you've sort of done something stupid, that's just reckless. And if you want to go and sort of risk your own life doing those things, I doubt there's anybody can stop you, but don't go risking other people's, and don't go making the decision that maybe you shouldn't have done this when it's too late, and then you're bringing other people into it. And it seems to be that we've gotten away lightly this time. Fingers crossed. We never know what's going to get reported from around the country in the course of the show we're doing here, but hopefully people have responded in the correct way.
Yeah, it's just about keeping people off the street, and hopefully, as much of a dickhead as you are, if you do get saved by somebody, but then you're being brought to A&E, and then you've got people working on you to try and keep you alive, and that I think people did well this time. But speaking of storms, I just want to show you something that I noticed. It's kind of fascinating. I hope you can see this page. I don't know if you can see what's written on it. You can see that. Okay.
Yeah, your real broadband is limited today. Tell us what's on there, sir.
That's because of storm. EOWYN. What does that spell?
I would say Owen.
Yeah, on. Storm Eon. That's what it was called, right?
Yeah, I don't know who named that one. There's a bit of a bang of a Welsh lad getting notions and naming the storm for us this time around. That's how I reacted to that name. But from the Irish perspective, I think we can definitely call it Owen, can't we?
We can call it a storm on. And I was fascinated by the media personnel, the broadcasters, the presenters tripping over themselves trying to pronounce the Aon. But fair play to have to say. But look at this now. EOWYN, right? Look at that now. Let's take away a little N there, right? And we'll add in an L. L for loser. And then we got LOW. Oh, we need an R here. Hang on a second. And then we take an E out there for the crack. And then we've got Lowry. It spells Lowry. It's an anagram of Lowry, a storm that hit the unveiling of the new government. It was there. It was in practically. Lowry, the storm.
I think
is he?
That was
he.
That was the only stronger wind that we had this week, was the wind of change blowing through Irish politics. And it was a case of, the more things change, the more they stay the same. But I do think that a few things changed in politics this week. And it is amazing, really, to see that, you have Michael Lowry there, a convicted criminal, a man who was described as being profoundly corrupt by a tribunal held by the state, a man who's found to have taken bribes from two prominent businessmen. and he is the kingmaker in Ireland this week. And what really struck me about it, Keith, was the sense of entitlement from a lot of these lads. Like Micheál Martin, before he was ever elected Taoiseach, that was the thing that he wanted to be. And earlier on this week, I think it was Tuesday when they convened and they were going to elect a Taoiseach and that kind of thing. And he had brought up half a Cork so that they would be there to witness it. And I think part of it was the fact that they were annoyed that he wasn't elected on that day. But most of it was the fact that he wasn't elected in front of all his pals and his family and that kind of thing. But the notion of, we heard so much in the last year before the European elections and before the local elections, and we heard an awful lot about shadowy figures from Belfast and Sinn Féin and that kind of thing. I heard very little about shadowy figures from Tipperary with 5 offshore bank accounts, eventually getting to choose who the Ceann Comhairle was as they could ram through Micheál Martin as Taoiseach. But I digress. Maybe all of these things aren't related at all. Maybe it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, I want to bring your attention to it in the paper, the Irish Independent a few years ago. There's a certain Micheál Martin, now our Taoiseach, who made a statement at the time: no party can involve Michael Lowry in a coalition. And, I suppose there's been a big storm. High pressure, does things to people. It changes your... It just... I don't know what it does to a man. It's a certain man. When I lived in Darwin, when there was a high pressure hurricane coming in, it was a tropical storm coming in, and people used to go tropo. So there was a certain madness that would hit Darwin when the storm was coming in, and there's a sense of Micheál Martin totally forgetting about his past, the history, everything he said before, to just say Michael Lowry is a good guy and we want him in our coalition. He's gone tropo, Philip.
Just thing about Micheál Martin and about Fianna Fáil in general is that they don't have any memory, right? And they don't have any concept of the future. The only thing that matters to them is, are we in power now? And if not, how do we get back into power as soon as possible, right? And that goes from the party level, from the very highest level, to the individual, right? So basically what you have there is people with a voracious hunger for power, and indeed a belief that they're entitled to be in power, because, Fianna Fáil has governed our state for, if it's been in existence for 100 years, they've governed for about 70 of those years. So for most of the time of the existence of the state, they have had a sort of a monopoly on power, but much the same as we have the monopoly on truth on this particular broadcast every Friday. So when they're doing that they actually believe that, and like what he has said in the past, do you think he's ashamed about this? I don't think so. I don't think if you put up these headlines in front of him saying no party can consider Lowry as a member of government or that kind of thing, I don't think he's one bit ashamed of it. Now, there's two sides to this as well. If I can play devil's advocate against my own argument, Keith, right? I think that politicians should admit to changing their minds much more often, right? I do think that they should say, do you know what? We have new information, or this situation didn't turn out the way we planned it, so we're therefore changing tack. We're going to do the exact opposite of what we said. That's grand, I think, when it comes to certain things. Where it's not grand is where you turn to a fella who is profoundly corrupt, who did take bribes off 2 businessmen, who had 5 offshore bank accounts and was involved in things that were brought up in the Dáil by Pierce Doherty around, I think it was Darlington Football Club, and deals that were made around that were never fully explained.
Was it Doncaster?
Doncaster, sorry, not Darlington, but Doncaster used to have a great women's team there, Doncaster Bells. But I digress. They're not the kind of things you should be changing your mind about. Preferably, if you're against dealing with corrupt politicians, you should probably stick to that line. I can't see too much changing about that, unless Michael Lowry has had some sort of road to Damascus experience where he fell off his donkey and decided that, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, But he's never apologized for the things he's done. I think he was very sort of, aggressive with reporters who question him on the crimes that he's committed in the past, because let's not forget, it's not just any crime either, right? He didn't pay his taxes, he lied on his tax returns, right? And you're expecting a person who's gone in there to a government that depends on those taxes to fund the services provided to the citizens of the state, and you're letting a guy who did that in there to have a decision. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the last point I would make on that is the people at Tipperary need to have a bit of a word with themselves. Lads, I have a load of sympathy for you for the wins you were exposed poster, right? But you can't keep sending people like this back up there just because he gets a few quid to repair the damage of this storm or the potholes in the road. We have to aim higher, right? We have to aim for something better than people like this. You know, looking after your own is a great trait altogether, but we have to do it in an honest and a transparent fashion. And we have to look after the people of the nation. He's not a local councillor. He's a TD. He's a representative of the national parliament, and he has to behave in that manner.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, Micheál Martin was so blinded by this, this golden, this golden Taoiseach of Ireland vision in front of him. He was so blinded by his own ambition. I wonder, by bringing this guy in to sort of, get them over the line, he might not be Taoiseach for that long, the way things are going. And as you mentioned, Pearse Doherty bringing up new information, and that will keep happening. And the opposition, which is their job, will keep hammering them until something cracks. And let's not forget, because it wasn't misogyny what happened when the opposition had a problem with what was about to go down the day the Dáil was basically called off and Micheál Martin didn't get to put on his gold medal in front of his friends. The problem was they wanted Micheál Martin to sit on the opposition side of the Dáil and take up valuable time from the opposition, speaking time, which is that's their opportunity to mention these things, like Pearse Doherty took, to bring up the Moriarty tribunal, to bring up the football debacle, which he has completely denied. Not only has he denied it, but they burned documents to get rid of any evidence of all the meetings he had in Doncaster and bringing people into Leinster House as well. So let's not forget that. Let's not get sidelined by this. I heard on a certain radio station they were talking about misogyny, and I really found that really horrible what they were trying to say there. Now, speaking of memory and short memories, about 10,000 houses somewhere, but nobody could find them. So they said that they built 40,000 houses, maybe 33,000 houses.
30,330, I think.
Sorry, yes. There you go. I was even amount of houses. So there was a missing 10,000 houses roughly. What do you think happened there, Philip?
I think that if you're the kind of person who heard the rhetoric from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael before the election, and you heard them saying, we're going to deliver 40,000 houses, I have some magic beans available at a very good price. And I would suggest you get in there now, because they're not going to last forever, lads, right? Anybody who believed that they were going to get anywhere close to 40,000 houses when they were making people homeless like the new time, I'm sorry, you need to check yourself out there. Okay. Why do you feel the need to believe these people when they have told you the lies time and time and time again about housing, right? We have heard time and again from Simon Harrison, from Micheál Martin, and from Darragh O'Brien, and from everybody else that they're solving the housing crisis. They aren't. Objectively, they are making it worse. Objectively, you have the numbers in black and white, lads. They are not delivering, even on the meager things that they're promising. They can't deliver upon them. Right. And that to me is the great failing, because the unfortunate thing now is we're stuck with these lads. Now, you mentioned, Keith, I think actually you misspoke a little bit earlier on there when you said about Micheál Martin sitting on the opposition bench and speaking. It's Lowry that sort of wants those opposition TD or those TDs that are supporting the government to be able to speak on opposition time and that, But these guys now, they said whatever they need, as they always do. They said whatever they needed. Pat Rabbitte from Labour famously said, sure, isn't that what you say when you're trying to get elected or at election time, So that's what they did. And they got the votes and people believed them. And this is why I think that it's now time, as voters and as citizens, that we start to hold one another to account, right? I don't know if you voted, and I'll be asking you privately. I'm sure we'll have these discussions over the next weeks and months and years about how you voted. I don't get to vote because I've lived outside of Ireland for too long, right? But if you voted for these people, I'm holding you responsible for that, Keith, right? You have to own what happens over the next 4 years, right? You have to own the people on the trolleys. You have to own the people in homelessness. You have to own the targets that aren't met for housing and that kind of thing. You have to own own, the young people who decide that they have no future, as indeed your own son might have decided he has a better future in the UK than what he has in Ireland, as my children might have a better future in Sweden or in Spain or in Bali or in Australia. That's what we need to be talking about, and we need to hold each other to account, because unless we hold each other to account for how we vote, we're not going to hold these clowns in government to account. But the failure on housing, it's so obvious and it's so catastrophic that I honestly can't understand how anybody can go into a voting booth and put a check by the names of one of these perennial failures, because this is of Fianna Fáil's making and has always been. They brought us the crash. They had the chance to revolutionize housing in Ireland and they didn't do it. They basically sold everything back to their pals. And again, if we believe that they're going to fix housing and this, I don't know who the new housing minister is. I'm sure it passed by yesterday when the cabinet was being announced. It doesn't matter, because they're ideologically incapable of fixing these things. And that's the big problem that we have to solve in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. I can categorically, I'm glad to be able to tell you that I didn't vote for anybody involved in the current government, but we have to feel sorry for people who voted independent, thinking that they wouldn't do a Matty McGrath. I think it's at the moment.
You see, again, the thing is that, these people told us who they were a long time ago, right? If you look at pretty much every independent that was elected, and every independent that is part of this technical group that is both in government and opposition, if you listen to them themselves, right? Where did they all come from, Keith? Pretty much all of them come from two parties. You might have heard of them, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Right? Most of them at some point were very, very popular local politicians who did it. And again, we've said it before, they do a great job for their local communities. And they fell out with the boys up in Dublin and their toys went out of the pram, right? And they stayed there and they used, the Dáil to sort of, to grow their reputations as independents. And then they got returned, right? And even some of them, I think Neil Blaney back in the day used to refer to himself as independent Fianna Fáil, So it's no surprise where these people come from. It's not Michael Lowry. Michael Lowry was never Jim Larkin, friend of the working man, standing on the barricades and advocating for all sorts of progressive causes. He's Fine Gael DNA all the way through, and the same thing for the Healy Rays and everybody else. I think it was Matty McGrath was a Fianna Fáil councillor and a TD before he became an independent. This is who they are. And we knew this. And everybody who voted for them and who gave them a second or third or fourth or fifth preference knew this. So there can be no surprise whatsoever when we go into Dáil Éireann to elect a new Taoiseach with all these new TDs and that kind of thing. You know which way the cards are going to fall before they even walk through the door, because this is who they are. And the idea, if you went in there thinking, I'm voting for an independent, I'm voting against the establishment, you're not, lads. These lads are the establishment. No. They are what I would describe as sheep in wolves' clothing in the Irish political context.
We have to bring our Al. Sorry to tell you that we've been hit by a storm. Lowry. I can't remember. It's an anagram of Lowry. Some name sounds like Owen. And I'm a little bit glitchy.
Micheál Martin.
I'm a little bit glitchy. I believe you have something to say about what we were just talking about. Just chime in there with your own thoughts.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
okay?
Coming through loud and clear, sir.
Okay, greetings from Thailand. So I'm a few hours ahead of you guys and missing the storm. I believe it's full of action. Yeah, look, I can't disagree with you guys. I mean, just my only my bugbear is that we're heading into a situation where there is no opposition. That's it. It's as simple as that. So we're in a situation where it's the same story, rinse and repeat. As you said, it's the same people coming back in again. It's the same scenario, and until the people of Ireland want to really affect change and follow that with action in terms of putting some serious consideration into who they're voting into office, we're going to I feel like we're trying to start. That's my
I'll put some to you. Okay, so when you saw they wanted to get Micheál Martin nominated as Taoiseach, and the accidental opposition, if you like, right? The people who couldn't agree until the couple of days before the election that they should transfer votes between themselves, all of a sudden came together, right? They all coalesced very quickly in opposition to this idea that these independent TDs could also be in opposition, right? That, I think there was sort of loose plans there and that kind of thing, but they gave a very unified reaction, right? Now, in our lifetime, lads, we've never really had a proper opposition. You've always had one of the big right-wing parties in power and one of the big right-wing parties in opposition, and the whole thing sort of went as it was. But now it seems to me that there is the beginnings of an actual united opposition to the parties in power, because Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, through no fault of their own, have been sort of forced to come together to put together a government together with these independents, and that leaves people who, they're not the same, but Sinn Féin, PBP, the Social Democrats, they come from the same sort of political DNA. Do you not see that as being the possibility of an actual sort of unified opposition for this Dáil term?
I see it as a rudderless boat. That's going to go around. It's going around in fucking circles. I just look. I'm an attention to detail guy. I'm fucking organized. I'm super organized, and I get shit done. And when I see people coming together at 1 minute to midnight to cause an upset that really didn't do anything meaningful, it didn't stop the process. It just delayed it. And it's disorganized chaos, right? And that's the last thing our country needs at the moment. It needs an organized, clinical opposition party that are going to bring real opposition to the government with representation from the people, what the people actually need. What the people need right now is a fucking leader. Somebody to step in to say, okay, here's the country as it stands today, and here's our plan. Our opposition plan is not going to be, which has been, as you correctly said, it's kind of like, I watch Adam Sandler a lot. You ever see the one where he's raising the kid and he's showing the kid to throw the twig or the branch in front, Big Daddy, in front of the fucking guys in the skateboard. It's like, boom, off the skateboard, right? That's how I compare the fucking opposition party at the moment. All they're doing is throwing the fucking log in front of the skateboard, and then the guy's going to get up and get back on the skateboard. They might have a few cuts and bruises, but they're not stopping them. That's it. Like, these guys are on the fucking choo-choo train. They're on the pilot. They're driving it home, and they're going to have a couple of wrinkles. But unless we come to a position where you can actually, I guess I learned this lesson a long, long time ago. Unless you're willing to lose in a negotiation, you're not negotiating. So unless you're going to a battle with no fear of losing, because losing could be an option, and that's it, and you're fighting for your life, that's a strategy. So a strategy is going up against the government, not dancing to the tune, not just lip service, actually going with a plan where they're not afraid to call out, they're not afraid to lose, they're not afraid they're happy enough to put it in there and give these guys a proper challenge and go for it and represent the people. I mean, look, I can't do this with the Irish public at the moment. In terms of anybody who voted against must be just physically fucking sick with their vote. They must be just absolutely a waste of fucking time. What a waste of a vote. And we tried to get one of our preferred leaders in there to bring it. Like, in my humble opinion, we failed. That there's the same government incoming for the next few years, and not only that, it's the same Taoiseach. I mean, what do people? It's down to expectation.
It's a fair point. There's something there, and I think it was an absolutely just disastrous first few days for a government. I mean, we had junior ministers, super junior ministers, raises. We had them coming in trying to, with shenanigans with like lads on the opposition that weren't on the opposition. We've Michael Lowry in there. I just don't think, and I know what you're saying, that they need to be more organized, but I think that there's something there. I don't think this government is going to last. And I think that, we're already hearing people talking about how great Mary Lou McDonald would be as a Taoiseach, and that's already out there. They are you're talking about pebbles, like they're putting crumbs down. They are sort of, it's slowly catchy monkey. And I don't think there's any rush here. I do think that this government is going to be hoisted by its own petard. And I think that the way that our new Taoiseach was blinded by this idea of being Taoiseach is, it's something he's always wanted. And it totally got in the way of being a leader for the country. As you said, and I agree with you, Al, a country that is rudderless at the moment. And I just think they just looked like amateurs, absolute amateurs. And, I don't know. I would hope. I mean, I also kind of agree with you, but I suppose I'm looking at the chaos in a more optimistic way, maybe.
Well, I think that point that Al made is very, very important about looking for a leader, like an actual proper leader, right? Say what you like about him, but if you go back to the days of Charles Haughey, there was a man with vision and there was a man with charisma. Now, there's a man who was corrupt as well, right? But people bought into his vision of Ireland when he said we are living beyond our means, and obviously he meant himself rather than us, But when you had somebody like that, Garrett Fitzgerald was another great man for it. John Hume was another great man for it. His vision of peace in Northern Ireland was essentially what brought us to where we got to with the peace process and the various ceasefires throughout the 90s there. And that's lacking at the moment because we have followers in Ireland, right? So if we think back to the referendums that happened, such as the one to repeal the 8th Amendment, such as the one on same-sex marriage, and that kind of thing. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, for the most part, were against these things until they weren't, because all of a sudden it was politically expedient for them to go, oh, well, actually, Leo Varadkar in particular spoke in the Dáil about being against same-sex marriage as a gay man himself, which, might strike many as being very odd, But that's what we're lacking at the moment. And this is what disappoints me a little bit about Mary Lou McDonald, lads, as leader of Sinn Féin. When you see some of the about turns that Sinn Féin have made, right? I'll give you one example. A couple of years ago, Mary Lou McDonald correctly said there's no such thing as open borders. And then about a year later, she said, oh, Sinn Féin is against open borders. Which is it, right? You're saying these things because it's in the zeitgeist now, right? It doesn't actually matter. What you need to do, when people start talking about things like that, you need to talk about housing, you need to talk about health, because they're the big issues for Irish people, right? You should be telling the Irish people, don't get distracted by this bullshit. And that's what derailed Sinn Féin was. If you're going to allow Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to dictate the terms of the discourse, every game you play is an away game, right? You're playing on their home turf every single time, and you can only lose, right? You need to hammer the same things over and over again. Yeah, like the old Bill Clinton line, it's the economy, stupid, right? Just keep talking about housing and just keep talking about health. If you keep bringing it back to those things and promise, and then if you do get the chance, deliver on some or all of those promises, then you won't have a problem. But as Alan correctly says, at the moment they're not leading. And that's what the Irish people and what Irish politics need is real leaders, people who aren't in it for themselves. The way Micheál Martin wanted that, being anointed in the Dáil. He wanted all those handshakes. He wanted that to be on TV and on the front page of the newspapers, right? You're doing it for yourself. Like, again, you need to be doing in the service of others. I've said before on this podcast, Muhammad Ali used to say that service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth. If you're in politics for yourself, you're in the wrong game. Go into business, go into commerce, go do things there, right? If you're in public service, you need to be there for that purpose and that purpose only, which is to serve the public.
Yeah, you're dead right.
It's a tough. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's
okay.
I get your frustration now, because I know exactly what you're thinking. The Dáil is a circus, and there's actually shit going on that we need to be concerned about. So let's bring it and let's talk about private equity, and let's talk about. We're going to do a bit more. I know Philip is doing a bit of work on this. We're going to find out, exactly what's happening in Ireland. But Al, you can give us a little bit of a summary, and we've spoken about it before. But what's going on with private equity? Well, I've heard of a street full of every pub on in Cork and possibly the whole street being bought up by private equity firms. Ireland is not being owned by people who live in the country. The money is leaving the country. There's all that going on, and because of the circus in the Dáil, we're not talking about it. So Al, if you could just sort of tell us a little summary and let people know why we should be concerned about private equity, what's going on, and why it could be bad for Ireland and is bad for Ireland.
Yeah, and just it dovetails nicely into the previous conversation, but just to kind of give it clarity on that, and we can cover it off in a moment, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. You know, it's what's happening in the US right now. Trump got in, everybody's going to consolidate and get behind him to support him as the leader. That's it. Get on with it and get the country performing. That's it. Like, that's the attitude. He's in, he's done, he's won.
Yeah.
Let's get it done. And a good leader would pull everybody together, and that's what we're lacking, right? But we'll move on. And private equity, I mean, a very simple point to speak to that is, if there's a gap that's not being filled, there is plenty of private equity firms with a lot of cash that would step in to do it. And that's what's happening. So this is not unrelated to the conversation we just had in terms of, if a country is lacking leadership, and let's call it, we're all Irish in terms of patriotism, not nationalists, right? But patriotic. It's a beautiful country. There's some beautiful places to buy property, and people will continue to go to Ireland and stay in Ireland and live in Ireland and work in Ireland. So when there's an opportunity, these guys will take that opportunity. So there's two things, okay? We can play devil's advocate here, and on one side and say it's terrible. But what's the alternative? Buildings falling down, nobody building buildings, no stimulus in the economy, nobody getting houses anyway, because the people can't afford the houses. This is the problem. So instead of looking at the symptom of the problem, let's look at the problem. There is a complete shit show in Ireland in terms of banking facilities for people that need to borrow money to buy a property. They just simply cannot get there. That's it. They have to move into the spare room in their parents' house, into the fucking box room or whatever you call it, to try and save to buy a property, because they just cannot simply do it on a normal wage. That's it. And that's even with two people working. Never mind start a family, right? So that's the biggest issue we have. Not the private equity guys coming in buying it up, because that's opportunity. These guys just, like, they're somewhat kind of faceless, right? They're the faceless ghost in the scenario. If they have a lot of capital, and they'll put it where they get a return on investment. And to them, it is not personal. It's just, that property is worth X. I'm going to pay Y for it, and I'm going to make Z, because nobody else is going to do it. That's it.
And when you see private equity firms coming in, Al, because obviously, you've been a businessman pretty much all your life, right? And for those of us on the outside who look at it from the point of view of, if you live in Clonmel, or if you live in Claremorris or somewhere, and you're looking at your high street changing because, what used to be the local pub or the local hair salon or the local undertaker, it might still have the same business, but now a private equity firm has gone in there and they have either bought the business, or they bought the land, they bought the offices, they bought the premises and that kind of thing. Do you think, when you link it back to, we all grew up in an area where there was local businesses, local pubs that were owner driven and that kind of thing. Does it make a difference to society who owns these services and who runs these services? Is it a case that the profits from these things go out of the country, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because at least we still have the services at the end of the day.
Well, I'll answer that directly. And we actually covered this off at the very, very beginning when we started this, Keith, if you remember. And I was saying that this isn't a new problem, right? This is a problem that has been gathering momentum for quite some time, which is the small to medium businesses in Ireland have been absolutely wiped out by the FDI strategy for Ireland, which is, every IDA job that comes in, and I'm saying this now blankly, I'm not personalizing in any way, and I know people come into the country and they add a lot of value and they spend more, but the reality is a lot of the money is going out of the country. Every one IDA job is 4 jobs lost for somebody working in a small business, because it's as simple as this. They cannot afford the rates. They cannot afford to compete with that, right? Then coupled with, the tax breaks or whatever the larger companies are getting, that's a whole different, we could spend another full show just on that topic, right? Then you've got guys like, if you remember, Allo came on, he was giving you some live scenarios of where the smaller guy is trying to get in and the bigger guys are moving in on top of it. Ireland has been gravitating towards an imbalance for quite some time, which was, if you go back to the 80s, 90s, when we came out of the problems, we started becoming kind of 63 to 65%, maybe a bit higher, where the employment in Ireland, the vast majority of employment in Ireland was small to medium businesses. It was very vibrant, it was family orientated. It was a fantastic environment to be in. And it was very much that collaborative ecosystem. Now Ireland's gone into, we do not give a shit about anybody. Let's be very candid, right? The majority of people that are in Ireland at the moment don't really have, in a group scenario, individually, everybody cares. And obviously everybody in an interpersonal relationship is a very nice person. And I always like to think the best of people. But when you put them all together in a group and the interests are not aligned, everybody just gets on with it. So this has been highlighted for quite some time, where the vast amount of money coming in. But there is an air of caution here, guys, right? The other thing that's going to impact us greatly is the FDI strategy from the US is going to change demonstratively under Trump overnight. He's going to relook at all of the US companies that are based outside the US. What's their scenario in terms of the tax they're paying? They're being taxed. He wants to flip the lid. He wants to tax countries for using US companies to enrich US citizens. That's his line. Okay. And we saw a touch of that in his last administration, where he started to de-incentivize companies in big pharma and big tech for employing outside of the US, right? Okay. So that's another key point as to why we now need leadership more than ever, because Ireland is demonstrably exposed to an impact if there is a material change to FDI, particularly in the US, in the next 12 months. We're heavily dependent on it. And that to me is the greater concern. So first thing is, if you look at it from a constitution, from a patriotic standpoint, what's a constitution, right? Have a home, have a family, happy life, earn a living, and be able to live in your country without having to leave. For the last couple of years, we went on ignored. Our youth of Ireland is getting the fuck out of Dodge for the last couple of years. They're out of there, right? Too expensive. They're immigrating, migrating, or they're working remotely for a company outside the country anyway, right? So that's the reality. So now this is just another symptom of the greater problem, which is Ireland has lost its identity, in my opinion.
Are you concerned in any way about Trump and how he's aligned himself with the richest man in America? A tech bro, billionaire. You've got Facebook, Meta. We've got Musk in there. He's a very wealthy man. Are we concerned about the fact that he's thought it might be? I don't know if he meant it as a joke. I don't know where it came from. It looks terrible to be up on a podium on the day of inauguration of an American president, giving what looked like a Nazi salute. Does that concern you in any way about America? We can look at Trump and think he's going to consolidate everybody, but it doesn't look great.
Is that to me, Keith?
Yes, please, Mal.
Firstly, I'm going to be unpopular for saying this, but I am a big fan of Musk, right? I am linked to him directly to his family, right? I think he has achieved unbelievable technology advancements as an individual, right? He is a powerhouse, and I think if you put a guy like that in, again, it's an opportunity. He saw an opportunity, he took it, and he went for it, right? And they were successful. So I think the whole propaganda around what said or what didn't said, look, I mean, was he doing a Nazi sign or wasn't he doing a Nazi sign? Was he saluting or not saluting? But to be honest, does it really fucking matter the way things are at the moment, right? The reality of the situation is we need leadership coming from somewhere. These guys said they're bringing it. Who knows what their plan is? But all I know is overnight, and whether it's strategic, planned or not, their ceasefires have started. The threat of World War III is less imminent than it was a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I'm a father of four, husband of one. I was getting very concerned around the instability in a lot of locations. That seems to be subsiding, right? It seems to be, back to my point, all of these tech billionaires that were, arguably in friendly fire with each other, Mexican standoff, whatever you want to say, have come together, which is back to my point exactly. These guys will solidify together under leadership, and good, bad, or indifferent, they will get organized and they'll bring in a process that will, and we'll know very, very quickly what the impact of this is. But one thing's for sure, I would take that 10 times over anarchy and fucking chaos. Because when you're in chaos, people do stupid stuff. When people are aligned in one vision to drive success, at least you've got a clear idea of what's happening. and that's my that's why answer to that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the things that are happening there, though, and I'm wondering that I get the point about strong leadership and everything else like that, but just a strong leader isn't always right, you know. And this is the thing, that some of the things that are happening are done, but they're being done on an ideological basis, right? Some of the things that they're coming out with, some of the things that are saying, like some of the things that are doing even are not going to have, like, for instance, if you take the immigration, some of the executive orders that were signed about immigration now in the United States by President Trump in his first couple of days, right? And a lot of the thing has come down to around immigration is, oh, you know, these unvetted people coming into our countries and that. And one of the first programs they stopped was some of the most heavily vetted people in the UN's refugee programs who've already been vetted, who are waiting on flights to get into America. And now they're just not going to be allowed to come in. So when you get into that, they're kind of telling you a different story, you know, from what it is one might expect. And the flip side of that then, and actually it's another thing, Al, that you'll probably know more about, right? But when they start talking about tariffs on the EU and Canada and Mexico and that kind of thing, tariffs aren't paid by the companies. Your company is not going to be the one paying the tariff. It's the end customer in the United States who wants that European car, or that European tech, or that European pharmaceutical, who's going to end up paying it. It's not the state is going to end up paying it. So I'd be a little bit sort of, you know, I wouldn't be in a hurry to sort of rush to say that, okay, these are sort of strong leaders, therefore they're great leaders. I don't think that they've thought these things through as much as they think that they've thought them through.
I didn't say great, though. Remember, if you go back and listen to what I said in terms of, you know,
I absolutely, I can see that.
My very specific point was leadership. I would take leadership over anarchy any day, right? Now, and also, at least we know exactly what's going on, and then we can react to that or respond to that in some shape or form. But I mean, if I was to sit down today and let's invite people on, if I'm incorrect, TDs, whoever the new elected, you know, Taoiseach or any of the journalists want to come on and say, if I ask 10 people in a room today, what is Ireland's strategy under the new government? Can you tell me exactly what you think is going to happen with Micheál Martin as the leader, Taoiseach and leader? I mean, would we get a consistent answer, or would anybody even have an idea? But one thing's for sure, you ask anybody in the US right now, good, bad, indifferent, what is Trump administration strategy? They'll be able to tell you within the realms of 90% accuracy what exactly is happening, right? That's all I'm saying. And I'm saying it remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, and I'm you know, this is not going to impact me directly in any shape or form. I think from a US perspective, that anybody who's in the US right now, regardless of what happens or doesn't happen, will be the beneficiary of what this guy is going to drive home. That's for sure. And I can see US getting very insular in the next year to 2 years, and let's see how it materializes. But you know, it opens up again the conversation for us all. Why the hell is Ireland not fixing itself first? Why do we keep getting involved in other people's problems? And why aren't we looking inward and said, right, there's nothing wrong, or there's no shame in getting insular for a while to fix our own country first? And you know, it's kind of, I use the airplane kind of, analogy or metaphor. You're going down in the flight, it's spreading to our heads, right? If the flight is going down, you put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then you help the kids. So how can Ireland help anybody at the moment? We can't fucking help ourselves, literally.
But yeah, and it just makes me think, and then you've been saying it from the start since we started this, Al, is that there's a circus going on because they don't want us to know what's actually going on, and that brings us to the private equity conversation that we had, and you know, but the point is anyway that I want to make right now is that Al, you have an opinion, Philip, you have an opinion, I have an opinion. They're all valid opinions, and what we do here in MOTH is people have their opinions, and they're different, and we don't agree with each other all the time, and that's okay. The only thing we do have to agree on is
Hey,
I know you guys are dying to hear this again. Hopefully it'll play because my broadband isn't great.
He's back.
It's not even playing. Nothing is playing.
Both of those played for us anyway.
How can we, with all this technology?
I can hear it.
Did you hear them both?
We heard them both, yes. So we had Believe It or Not, and then we had Dick of the Week. And believe it or not, yes, the technology works. And Dick of the Week, Keith, if you end up playing them again, you're probably going to get the award this week, I'd say.
That guy from Alabama is back again.
Sweet home.
So, Dick of the Week, guys, before we go, Dick of the Week, Philip, give us a nomination for Dick of the Week, and then I'll be the judge.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Michael Lowry. I can't get my head around the fact that, how did we allow this to happen? Like, that of all the people in Ireland, he got to be the kingmaker, so he represents it. But I think in representing that, he represents everybody that votes for him as well. Because as I say, I think these people need to have a little word with themselves to make sure that this
they're all dicks.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the last time, the last all turn that we get to elect him as Dick of the Week, So it's between him and Leo for the last couple of weeks, So not Leo Varadkar, by the way.
I keep like this is the gift that keeps giving. I mean, we could keep this show going for fucking 2 years talking about this guy. So this Jeffrey Leo has to be the Dick of the Week. So he sent defamation orders to us, which we had to spend money defending, right? On the very topic that we raised. And now here he is in court, in the Commercial High Court on Monday, to go on affidavit, right, by the very people that he said were telling lies to us, right, that we are telling lies. We told the truth, monopoly of truth. And here he is going into the High Court to defend exactly what we fucking said, right? And not one MSM has reported on it again, right? So it's definitely a toss-up between Charlie Taylor and Jeff Leo, but I think Jeff Leo has to top it, right? Not only that, the guy has been, documented for abusing people. I think, verbally assaulting or assaulting. The mischief maker is back again. He'll continue on. Again, we said it many times in the show. Just give that family the money back. I don't know why they even have to go to High Court to try and get their hard-earned money back. And here he is, up there again, and not one person talking about him, and the stuff that's coming out. I mean, myself, you and Philip didn't have a chance to talk about this yet, but I've had 3 or 4 phone calls directly as a result of our show being sent to them about guys that are actually prepared to go on record with us to say, he's done this to them, he's done that to them, he's done this, he's going on assaulting old ladies, he's threatening women, he's threatening kids. I mean, this just keeps getting on and on. And look, as you know, we're not a fan of this guy regardless. But I think the other thing is this goes back again to the same topic where, the lack of leadership in this country allows people like him to come over here and prosper on the back of Irish citizens' hard work. And he's literally, like, I'm not over exaggerating this. He's literally brought an entire town to its knees, like an entire town, right? To the point that he's destroyed the place, right? 2 towns. I mean, like, that's some fucking going. I know Michael Lowry has the issue, but like, this guy is here now. He's fucking right now continuing.
I thought we were still talking about Michael Lowry.
He's here.
Are they cousins?
Well, look at. As bad as Michael Lowry is, his American cousin is over. As bad as Michael Lowry is, I'm going to have to go with Al on this because, as you said, we're getting reports in of this man, this American dude driving around the town of Dundrum in County Tipperary shouting abuse at women. There's a town in Kildare called Straffan. Apparently, he's ruined many people's lives and livelihoods in that town. He's leaving behind him in his wake so much destruction, and it seems like the closer it gets, the justice gets to him, the wilder he's getting. So I mean, I kind of feel like these are the last stings of a dying wasp, because wasps have more than one sting, don't they? I don't think he's a bumblebee. I think he's a wasp. So I'm going to have to go with Jeff on this. And I do want to say at this point, he's Dick of the Week. Well done, Jeff. I do want to say as well at this
lads,
point,
lads,
if you
I have to butt in here, right? We're going to have to consider some sort of a weighting system, right? Do you remember Henrik Larsson, the great Swedish soccer player, when he was playing for Celtic, and he was scoring against these crappy teams every week, and they said, okay, so every goal you score is only worth like half a goal because you're playing in Scotland and it's not fair. And I think we need a similar thing here. It's just not fair. Michael Lowry is doing his damnedest, lads, to win Dick of the Week off this show, and the poor chap hasn't a chance. And I'm in here fighting his corner, which I never expected to be doing.
He's close. He's very close. It was close this week, Philip. It was close this week.
He hit the post.
Just show you.
Right enough, you know.
He's one of our own. He's one of our own. You know, we like our own. If you're going to mess with the Irish, make sure you're Irish.
But Philip, I say it again. Look, you know, not locking horns or defending, but he's a very popular guy for the people he represents. So that's my point. I mean, 100%. He does continue. He can. Whereas this guy is literally a cancer. He's a parasite, right? Literally, like he's everywhere he goes. And look, Keith's got armory out the wazoo from people he's spoken with. I mean, like everywhere everything this guy touches, literally turns to shit. Like literally, like I think it's close to 22 people I've spoken with that have all been directly impacted or indirectly impacted by this guy's action over the last decade. Like, I'm not talking light stuff. But anyway, look, as you said, I'll concede on that one. What we'll do is we may pivot, Keith, to the Dick of the Month, and then we'll ensure that the person that's voted as Dick of the Month can't participate in each Dick of the Week, and then we'll have a weighted vote. An audience.
We could have some sort of Champions League format as well. You know, where the heavy hitters end up the top.
18.
You know?
We've got 18 or 27 or whatever it is, and then like 16 go through to knockout, and then 8 go through to the third knockout.
No one has a clue what's happening.
and the surprise is we don't know who's playing until they've turned on the telly.
Did you ever see? The show? I'm showing my age now, but did you ever see Wreck-It Ralph? It's a very funny show.
Movie.
Kids love it, right?
Yeah,
movie. And you know when Wreck-It Ralph is sitting down, he's having therapy. All the bad guys are having therapy, and he's kind of sitting. He's like, "I'm the bad guy." This is Jeff. I know if he's watching it. He's like, "I'm the bad. What? I'm the bad. I'm not the bad guy. I'm always doing my best." The money was just resting in my account.
There's a great sketch as well with Mitchell, David Mitchell. I think it's Mitchell and Webb did it, and it's a guy dressed up in German SAS clothing, and it just dawns on him, and he goes, "Hang on a minute, are we the bad guys?"
or do you remember the guy? Is it Michael Douglas falling down? Do you remember he's got on? He's like turns into a vigilante. Do you remember that? And then he's like at the end, "How did I became the bad guy? How did that happen? I mean, I didn't do anything. I just like shot up a store and killed somebody, and I didn't do anything wrong."
Being a bad guy happens to you when you least expect it. So there you go. Jeff is the winner.
Jeff is the
winner for the month. We'll finish on this. Okay.
Jeff is the winner for the month, and what we could do is I did draw a comparison as I was listening tentatively to you and Philip about our incoming government, our government that's now in position, and it reminds me of a few episodes of Yes Prime Minister. So I might send you on a few clips of the conversations that you remember Yes Prime Minister, and we're definitely taking the scene
circulated. That's circulated on the Fianna Fáil Facebook page as a documentary.
Is it?
That's how we got to this point.
I think we could leave it on that. We'll leave it at that. Listen, if you have any stories you want to tell us, we're particularly interested in Jeff Leo's stories, personal stories, but anything really. If you've been wronged, if you want to share an opinion, is a safe space, and we want to get the news out there that the mainstream media or the MSN, as I likes to call them, aren't reporting on, or only reporting half on, or reporting the bits they like, or maybe going on the radio on the morning after a big moment in the Dáil and calling it misogyny. We can see you. We see what you're doing. We know what you're doing. You're not fooling anybody. Anyway, we'll leave them.
Wise up, journalists.
Who's even listening? Who's even reading? Who's even watching?
If only they could take a leaf out of your book, guys, we'd be the country would be a lot better place. I must say.
I'll swap a leaf out of my book for some decent broadband, guys.
You came around in the end. Please.
Good luck. Like everyone, Mal. Everyone comes round.
We broke it down eventually.
Good luck.